Hey besties, welcome back to the channel. Colleen Hoover is finally breaking her silence on the Blake Lively and Ryan Reynolds lawsuit against Justin Baldoni. And let's be real, based on the evidence we've seen so far, it's Ryan driving this entire situation. But now Colleen is giving an interview to Elle while promoting her new film, Regretting You. Despite the movie scoring a brutal 28% critic rating, it has quietly made $82 million at the box office. It hasn't had any explosive weeks, but it's been steadily climbing, with $44 million domestic. For context, It Ends With Us pulled in $50 million in one weekend, so this is definitely a slower burn. Critics hate it, but moviegoers are trickling in, making it a small sleeper hit. Now, Colleen, who once swore she was too busy writing books to care about Hollywood, is suddenly positioning herself as a filmmaker. When asked how involved she was on set, here's what she said. "I wasn't super involved. I was there 1 to 2 weeks more as a spectator. I didn't want to get in the way." Which is funny because during earlier promotion, she did claim she had some involvement, but now she's minimizing it again. It's unusual for an author to become so hands-on in filmmaking. Most writers stay writers and let the filmmakers do the filmmaking. But Colleen loves visibility, and she also has a long history of, let's call it creative storytelling. In other words, she has a habit of bending the truth. A perfect example is her long-running claim that It Ends With Us is her mother's true story. That is not what she originally said. Years ago, when the book first came out, she openly admitted the story is mostly fiction. The characters are not her parents. The events did not happen. The only real moment was the famous casserole scene. Her dad was not a neurosurgeon. Her mom was not a floral shop owner. They didn't live in Boston. There was no penthouse, no atlas, no dramatic custody arc. She imagined those things. And that's fine. She writes fiction. But she later repackaged it as my mother's story, because that framing sells books. It becomes a myth, a narrative, a PR hook. And now she's using that same myth as a shield, claiming that the current lawsuits surrounding It Ends With Us are so traumatic that she and her mother have PTSD from them. Which is wild, because she's not being sued, her mother is not being sued, no one is accusing her mother of anything, and no one is talking about her mother. In fact, Colleen is the only one invoking her mother repeatedly to deflect criticism. She even told Elle that the backlash over her inaccurate portrayal of DV is easy to stand by, because the book reflects her mother's experience. Except we literally have footage of her saying the book is 99% fiction. She uses her mom when it benefits her, then discards the truth when it doesn't. It's manipulative and borderline gaslighting. She also says she learned a lot from criticism, but wouldn't change a thing because this was one woman's story. Again, it wasn't. She made it up. She even admits she wouldn't write the book today because she's too worried about scrutiny, which probably means people are simply catching on. But here's where it gets even messier. Colleen is listed as executive producer on It Ends With Us and has a screenwriting credit. Yet now she claims she was completely unaware that anything was happening between Blake, Ryan, and Justin during production, which makes no sense. She told Extra she was on set for 1 to 2 weeks. She told Elle she was only there a few days. She says she wasn't involved, yet her name is on the project multiple times. She claims she didn't know anything was happening, but she was physically on the set while everything was happening. These contradictions don't match up, and that's the point. Colleen Hoover is trying to distance herself from the lawsuit fallout without giving up her role as the face of the franchise. She wants the credit when things go well and the distance when things go badly. And besties, the mask is slipping. Now, suddenly, it was just a few days. But we all know it was closer to 2 full weeks, and she documented every second of it in her cohort's Facebook group. This is what happens when someone is constantly spinning the narrative. The thing about the truth is simple. It stays the same. Lies shift, lies morph, and when you're not telling the truth, your story will always change. Remember when she put out a statement praising Blake for being so strong and brave, and her friend jumped in saying, if you knew what Justin did, you'd be shocked. Now she's claiming she was completely unaware. Besties, this is someone desperately trying to distance herself from a situation she helped create. She calls the lawsuit unfortunate and says it feels like a circus because real people are being impacted and careers have been affected. She says she's choosing her words carefully and wants to stay removed from negativity. Then she drops this gem. I have my own story I could tell, but I won't. I don't want to bring anyone down. I just want to stay quiet and let people think what they want. Except, didn't she just say she was completely unaware of anything happening on set? How do you have a story to tell if nothing happened? So which is it? Were you unaware, or do you have a story? This is a woman who swore for years she'd never move into filmmaking. She said she just wanted to write books, and now she's a filmmaker. She saw the money because there's simply more cash in movies than in publishing. And yes, she's had huge success, but print sales decline every year. Most authors sell almost nothing. Her last book in 2023 sold around 75,000 copies. Not bad, but nowhere near the 12 million that It Ends With Us sold. Out of 24 books, one title accounts for most of her fame and wealth. Now she's saying she feels terrible for her mother, the woman she claims the book was inspired by. She even says, "I feel like my mom has gone through more from the aftermath of this film than she did with my dad." That is a shocking, disgusting thing to say. A lawsuit is more traumatic than physical, emotional, and psychological abuse? More painful than poverty? More painful than living with an abusive partner? Colleen hasn't lost any money. Her mother wasn't sued. Her mother wasn't dragged into anything, except by Colleen herself. Colleen lied by framing the book as her mother's story. Colleen partnered with Blake and helped cut Justin out. And now she's weaponizing her mother's trauma to dodge accountability and deflect criticism, claiming this loss is somehow worse than domestic abuse. That tells me everything I need to know about how little Colleen understands about DV. Legal criticism, public commentary, and lawsuits are not the same as the trauma survivors endure within domestic violence. Then she wraps it up by saying she can't even recommend It Ends With Us anymore. I'm almost embarrassed to say I wrote it. Honestly, after everything she said, I'm not surprised. Despite claiming she wants distance from the drama, Colleen Hoover keeps contradicting herself. She once insisted she knew the truth, repeated it for months inside her private groups, and completely aligned herself with Blake. Now she suddenly says she doesn't know the truth and was totally unaware of what happened on set. But in the same breath, she hints she has her own story to tell, which directly conflicts with her claim of being unaware. Which is it? Either nothing happened and she knew nothing, or she has a story she's choosing not to tell. Those two statements cannot be true at the same time. This pattern isn't new. She told Justin she unfollowed him because of her own issues, then told Blake a completely different story. She claimed she wasn't involved in the film, then admitted she read the script and gave input. She supported Blake publicly and privately, then suddenly said she's distancing herself because it's too negative. And now she frames herself as a victim in a situation she helped create. Hoover also says this whole ordeal has given her and her mother PTSD, but then openly admits she's never been to therapy and doesn't understand the clinical meaning of PTSD. PTSD isn't a buzzword. It's a diagnosis involving flashbacks, dissociation, rage, insomnia, and severe emotional triggers. None of that resembles Hoover's very public, very comfortable lifestyle over the past year while she's been filming, traveling, and celebrating her Hollywood opportunities. Using the term loosely, especially while attaching it to her mother's real trauma, minimizes what actual survivors experience. It also frames criticism and legal accountability as abuse, which is highly inappropriate. She now says she's embarrassed by her own book and doesn't recommend it anymore because the lawsuit has overshadowed it. But this situation exists because she, alongside Blake, made choices that directly contributed to the conflict. She wasn't just a bystander. She had a financial stake, she had a creative stake, and she had a motive, transitioning from author to filmmaker. Because that's the reality. Hoover
isn't just a writer anymore. She's building a production company, producing films, and even admitting she barely has time to write. Her next book is her first in 3 years. That's not the path of a novelist. It's the path of someone chasing Hollywood money. And when you compare her behavior to other mega authors with dozens of adaptations, Stephen King, Nicholas Sparks, John Grisham, J.K. Rowling, none of them suddenly switched careers to become film producers running their own studios. Hoover is the outlier, and not in a good way. It suggests she wanted control. She wanted ownership. She wanted the spotlight. And now that things have blown up, she's using domestic violence, her mother's trauma, and vague claims of emotional suffering as a shield, the same way Blake has used sympathy narratives to avoid accountability. In my opinion, Hoover is every bit as opportunistic as Blake, prioritizing money, control, and public image over honesty. And the attempt to paint herself as traumatized while refusing accountability is not just disingenuous, it's manipulative. There's no PTSD from consequences you created yourself. And her mother should never have been dragged into this to begin with. That was Hoover's choice, not the public's. Despite saying she wants to stay neutral, everything she's doing still aligns her with Blake's narrative while subtly painting Justin as the problem. The pattern hasn't changed, only the wording has. What do you think? Drop your thoughts in the comments. If you're new here, hit the like button, make sure you're subscribed, and tap the bell so you never miss an update. Thanks for watching, besties.